Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into a universe that doesn't even exist yet. Imagine the room around you going absolutely silent, darker than any blackout you've ever known. No stars outside your window, no moonlight sneaking through the curtains, not even the faint glow of your phone screen. Just pure absence. No clocks, no space, no time. You're floating. Or rather, you're not floating, because there isn't even a place to float in. It's the kind of nothingness that would make you beg for the boredom of waiting at the DMV. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a second here. Your brain would just say, nope, and shut down. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me down in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing our little timeline of viewers stretch across the planet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander through the absolute absence, and strangely enough, it almost hums with anticipation. Like standing backstage before the curtains rise, but the stage itself hasn't even been built. You lean forward, straining to hear something, anything, but there's no sound. Even silence would be too generous a word. It's not a pause in the music. It's the complete absence of an orchestra. An empty hall with no instruments, no musicians, not even air to carry the notes. And then, though you don't really hear it so much as feel it, the smallest tremor begins. Space stretches open like dough being kneaded by invisible hands, expanding everywhere at once. You can't point and say, it started over there, because over there hasn't been invented yet. Imagine inflating a balloon, except the balloon is everything, and you're somehow trapped inside it with no escape. You're expanding too, every atom of you racing outward, although atoms themselves haven't even signed the guest book yet. You blink, if blinking were possible, and in the infinitesimal sliver of a second, energy pours into being. It's not a warm campfire glow. It's searing, blinding, hotter than the core of 1,000 suns. Yet, strangely, it's not heat as you know it, because there's nothing for it to scorch. Still, you sense it pressing in from all directions, an endless roaring tide that would flatten any notion of you. Again, not that you'd last a heartbeat in here. As the flood of expansion continues, the storm begins to calm. Picture a boiling kettle taken off the stove. It hisses, then slowly quiets. Within that relative calm, the first tiny particles wink into existence. Protons, neutrons, electrons, little specks that will one day write the story of everything you love, from pizza crust to golden sunsets. They flicker like fireflies in the vastness, colliding, separating, colliding again, playing a frantic game of bumper cars in a universe still too hot to let them settle down. Time ticks, though ticks isn't quite right. It doesn't tick at all. It stretches like taffy. Seconds pass that feel infinite, and infinities shrink into moments. You lose track because there is no track. Yet somehow you know, something irreversible has begun. You look around, though there's no around to look at, and the fog of the newborn cosmos thickens. Energy converts to matter, matter to energy, in a cosmic exchange rate so fast it'd make Wall Street dizzy. It's chaotic, but not random. There's a pattern hidden here, like music waiting for the first chord. And then comes the silence again. Not the old silence of nothingness, but the charged silence of potential. The first canvas has been laid out. The paints are gathered, even if the brush is not yet touched. You shift, or think you shift, in this new domain. Your skin, if you had skin, would prickle with the realization that you're standing in the very nursery of existence itself. Later, historians of the stars, astronomers with their telescopes and patient notebooks, will argue endlessly about what exactly happened in these first seconds. They'll say, was inflation that quick? Did dark matter already lace itself into the fabric? And they'll shrug because the details slip away like soap in a bathtub. What you do know, here and now, is that you've stumbled into the first heartbeat of the universe. And it's not just any heartbeat, it's yours too. Because the hydrogen atom forming in this haze is the same hydrogen atom that one day will end up in the water you sip from a plastic bottle. The helium spilling into existence here will later float balloons at a kid's birthday party. Every moment you've ever lived is curled tightly in this newborn storm. You laugh, softly, because sound doesn't work yet, at the absurdity of it all. If you could text a friend right now, you'd say, "Hey, just hanging out at the Big Bang NBD." But your phone would be a mess of scrambled atoms scattered across light years. So maybe hold off on the selfie. Instead, you let yourself drift, though again, drifting means nothing here, into the rhythm of expansion. There's a strange comfort in it. The cosmos is growing, and you with it, like lungs taking their very first breath. And you realize, with a kind of awe that makes your chest ache, the darkness will never be the same again. Because tonight, you've just witnessed the very first flicker of something from nothing. And the story is only beginning. You're still drifting, and the newborn universe continues to swell around you like bread dough rising in slow motion. It stretches everywhere at once. No center, no edges, just more and more of itself. And you, caught up in this swelling tide, feel a strange dizziness, as if you're riding the world's fastest elevator without the reassuring ding at each floor. The heat is staggering. Imagine standing too close to an oven and multiplying that discomfort by, well, infinity. Yet it doesn't sear your skin, because you don't technically have skin. It just presses in from all directions, a weightless firestorm. You get the sense that if you had eyebrows, they'd be singed clean off, which might actually save you some money on grooming. Moments, or maybe thousands of years, slide by. Time is slippery here. You try to count, but the numbers dissolve like sugar in boiling water. Still, the universe cools, just a little, like steam settling after a pot has boiled over. And in that cooling, something miraculous begins. The scattered particles, once too energetic to stay put, start to find one another. Protons embrace neutrons like dance partners who've finally shown up to the party. Electrons dart around, zipping nervously, unsure whether to settle down. For now, they mostly keep their distance. Commitment issues, you could say. Hydrogen dominates. The simplest atom, one proton and one electron, timid yet stubborn, claiming center stage. Helium follows. 2 protons, 2 neutrons, a little more confident, a little heavier, like an older sibling. Together, they become the foundation of everything else. It's not glamorous, it's not Instagram-worthy, but it's history, the deepest kind. You glance around, though glancing in every direction feels the same, and notice an ocean of light trying to break free. For hundreds of thousands of years, it remains trapped in the fog of particles, bouncing, scattering, never finding an exit. You'd think of it like headlights in thick fog, except the fog is the entire universe, and the car is nowhere to be seen. And then, after what would feel like forever to you, but is really only about 380,000 years, something extraordinary happens. Electrons, those anxious little sprinters, finally calm down enough to bind with nuclei. Atoms are born in earnest. And with atoms stable, the fog begins to lift. Light, long trapped, surges outward in every direction. Not a spotlight, not a firework, but a soft, pervasive glow that fills everything. It's the universe's first baby picture, though it's more of a grainy ultrasound than a polished portrait. If you could somehow pull out your phone and snap a cosmic selfie, this is the background you'd capture. A faint, stretched-out light we now call the cosmic microwave background. Scientists still argue over its tiny ripples. Were they quantum hiccups? Was inflation too fast or too slow? But the fact remains, that light is still shining, stretched thin, a faint aftertaste of the universe's first breath. You let it wash over you, this ancient radiance. It's not bright, not blinding, more like the glow of a nightlight left on in a child's room. Comforting, steady, timeless. And you realize that even when you're gone, even when Earth itself is gone, that glow will still be whispering across the void. But the universe isn't finished, far from it. That light may be free, but the stage is still empty. There are no stars, no galaxies, no warm fires to gather around. Just endless hydrogen and helium, thinly spread, waiting. It feels lonely, like showing up early to a party and finding only the snacks laid out. No music, no guests. Still, you can sense gravity at work. It's the quiet one in the corner, not flashy, not loud, but persistent. Like a friend who always insists, "Don't worry, I've got this." Slowly, invisibly, it tugs at the clouds of gas, pulling, gathering, coaxing them closer together. The universe sighs, and you sigh with it, even though you don't have lungs yet. Everything is being prepared. Hydrogen waits like fuel in a tank. Helium lingers like embers ready to glow. The curtain hasn't risen, but you know, that the first spotlight is about to flicker on. You chuckle quietly at the thought. Billions of years later, people will study these moments with supercomputers and telescopes the size of buildings. They'll squint at faint patterns, argue at conferences over coffee, scribble equations that curl across chalkboards. And still, they'll shrug, because the details of how it all unfolded are slippery, stubborn, mysterious. But you're here, front row seat, no telescope required. You lean into the darkness, into the quiet glow, and wait for gravity's whisper to turn into a roar. Because the stage is set, the actors are waiting in the wings, and the first stars are about to be born. You feel the hush deepen, as though the entire newborn cosmos is holding its breath. Gravity has been whispering for eons now, nudging scattered clouds of hydrogen and helium, pulling them closer, tighter, denser. And you, yes, you, float there as if perched on the edge of a miracle, waiting for the lights to finally come on in this dark, endless theater. At first, it's subtle. A ripple here, a faint thickening there. Imagine steam gathering above a pot, drifting until it condenses into drops of water. Only now, the pot is the entire universe, and the drops are clouds of gas bigger than galaxies. You can almost hear the clumps groan as they collapse under their own weight, like ancient floors creaking under too many footsteps. You drift closer to one of these dense pockets, watching atoms collide again and again. Every collision raises the temperature. The pressure climbs, invisible hands squeezing tighter and tighter. The gas glows faintly, like embers under ash. You think of a marshmallow stuffed too long in the campfire. It starts soft, then suddenly bursts into flames. Except here, instead of sugar and carbon, you've got trillions of tons of hydrogen begging to ignite. And then it happens. In one blinding instant, nuclear fusion ignites at the heart of the collapsing cloud. Hydrogen nuclei slam together so violently they merge, releasing energy like a cosmic jackpot. The glow surges outward, breaking through the shroud, and for the first time in this entire dark universe, you see a star. You almost gasp, though the void won't carry your breath anywhere. It's not just a star, it's the first star. Its light cuts through the black like a match struck in a cave, sudden and fierce. Then another follows, and another. Across the cosmos, scattered clouds collapse, cores ignite, and points of light bloom like fireflies after rain. The universe, once a silent void, now glitters. It's breathtaking, like watching the first city lights twinkle on a distant horizon. You float in the midst of it, and for a moment, you feel less alone. Each star is a furnace. Deep inside, hydrogen fuses into helium, releasing light, heat, and, most importantly, possibility. Because as the stars burn, they create heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, the alphabet of life. You think of your own body, the breath in your lungs, and realize that everything you are is rehearsed here in these blazing furnaces. It's not poetry, it's chemistry with a flair for drama. The biggest stars live fast, burning their fuel in just a few million years. They swell, falter, and finally explode in supernovae, violent, luminous deaths that fling their innards across the universe. Gold dust, iron, calcium, silicon, scattered like cosmic confetti. You can almost taste it on your tongue, though licking a supernova isn't exactly recommended. Somewhere in this newborn sea of stars, you drift a little closer. The light warms you, even though warmth doesn't quite exist here yet. You imagine what it would be like to sit by a fireplace for the first time, after only knowing endless cold. The difference is intoxicating. Scientists much later will argue about these first stars. They'll call them population 3 stars, massive and short-lived, and debate whether they formed in small clusters or sprawling webs. They'll never be able to see them directly. Those stars died billions of years ago, but they'll keep chasing their ghosts with telescopes, like stargazers peering into the fog of memory. But you, lucky wanderer, don't need a telescope. You're here in the audience as the very first lights flicker on. You're watching the cosmos trade its emptiness for brilliance, and you can't help but smile at the thought that someday creatures on a tiny planet will look up at their night sky and whisper, "We are made of stardust." You drift back, letting the panorama unfold. One by one, the stars multiply, filling the darkness with their glow. And you feel, for the first time in this vast, expanding ocean, that the universe has finally opened its eyes. The stage is no longer empty. The curtain has lifted, and the performance has only just begun. You let the newborn starlight settle over you, but there's a tug, something pulling at the fabric beneath your feet, or whatever counts as feet in this drifting state. The stars aren't sitting politely in their corners. They're gathering, clumping, weaving themselves into sprawling neighborhoods. Gravity, ever the quiet architect, is laying down blueprints on scales too large for your brain to comfortably hold. You watch hydrogen clouds and shimmering star clusters stitched together into filaments, like threads in a cosmic spider web. Stretch your mind's eye far enough, and the whole thing looks like a giant neural network. Only instead of thoughts sparking, it's galaxies being born. It's almost funny. The universe is making a brain, and later, that brain will turn around and try to figure out the universe. Talk about recursion. The first galaxies are not the grand spirals you've seen in glossy photos. No, these are messy little things, lumpy, irregular, awkward teenagers of the cosmos. Gas swirls clumsily. Stars pop in and out like bad lighting at a school dance. You drift near one, and it shudders as a supernova rips through its center, blasting matter outward, reshaping everything. Galaxies in these times don't just grow. They fight. They crash. They merge. When they collide, their stars don't actually bump into each other. They're too far apart. But the gravitational chaos twists them into new shapes, as if some cosmic DJ is remixing tracks on the fly. You spot a pair of young galaxies spiraling together, drawn in like lovers or rivals. It's hard to tell which. Their gas clouds crash and spark, igniting new waves of star birth. From a distance, it's spectacular. Up close, it's violent. You flinch as tidal forces stretch them like cosmic taffy, and then, as if exhausted, they collapse into one brighter, larger galaxy. You wonder if galaxies ever get a moment to breathe. Probably not. There's a strange comfort, though, watching this cosmic urbanization. Neighborhood by neighborhood, the universe is filling out, turning the vast darkness into a tapestry of light. You tilt your head and imagine standing on some future world inside one of these galaxies, looking up at the night sky crowded with stars. Not the tame handful you see from Earth today, but a sky so packed it feels like a jeweled ceiling. And here's the kicker. Astronomers will spend centuries arguing over the details. How fast did the first galaxies form? Were they tidy disks or chaotic clumps? Which mergers birthed the giants we see today? The truth hides behind billions of light years, blurred like old photographs. The James Webb Space Telescope will peer deeper than anything before, spotting baby galaxies billions of years gone. And scientists will squint at the faint smudges, arguing like critics at an abstract art exhibit. But you don't need smudges. You're here. You can see the galaxies swell, twist, and settle. You can feel the hum of gravity knitting them into place, like a loom clacking away without ever stopping. It's beautiful, yes, but also a little overwhelming. You glance across the endless expanse and realize just how many of these galaxies are blooming. Not dozens, not hundreds, trillions. Each one a city of stars, each star a furnace, each furnace building the ingredients for life. If you had hands, they'd be trembling. If you had a notebook, it would already be full. You chuckle softly, thinking of how small you are compared to all this. And yet, here you are, front row. Galaxies colliding like bumper cars, star clusters shimmering like fairy lights, dark matter scaffolding, holding everything in place. The universe is no longer a dark, empty hall. It's alive with structure, with drama, with stories waiting to be told. And somewhere, deep inside you, a realization flickers. Without these galaxies, without this grand construction, there would be no you, no Earth. No quiet night to sit and listen to someone tell you this story. You're watching not just the birth of galaxies, you're watching the stage being set for your own existence. The lights dim a little as you drift back again. The stars glimmer in swirls and rivers, each galaxy glowing like a lantern, and you understand. The cosmos has just finished building its first cities. The night is no longer empty. It's populated, bustling, luminous, and you're drifting through the busiest, brightest downtown there has ever been. The galaxies shimmer and pulse around you, but your attention is drawn to something quieter, something less showy. It's the faint glow between the lights, the invisible scaffolding that makes all of this possible. You lean in, squinting, and realize you're staring at dark matter, the universe's ultimate wallflower. It's everywhere, holding everything together, yet it refuses to shine. You can't touch it, can't see it directly, but you can feel its pull. Without dark matter, galaxies would unravel like poorly tied shoelaces. With it, they spin gracefully, their stars clinging tightly as if obeying a hidden conductor. You float closer and catch yourself grinning. This stuff is like the duct tape of the cosmos, unglamorous, invisible, but holding the whole thing together. Around you, filaments of dark matter weave into colossal webs, stretching farther than you can track. Gas and galaxies trace these threads, gathering where the lines intersect, as if the universe is playing a game of connect the dots on an impossible scale. If you squint, the whole picture looks disturbingly familiar, like a map of neurons inside a brain. You wonder if, somewhere, a much larger being is staring down at this web and thinking, that looks a lot like me. And then there's the other player, dark energy. If dark matter is the glue, dark energy is the trickster. It doesn't hold things together, it pushes them apart. Galaxies that once huddled close begin to drift away, carried by the steady expansion of space itself. You notice the pace quickening, as if someone hit the fast-forward button on the universe. It's unsettling, like standing on an escalator that keeps speeding up when you're not ready. Astronomers in the far future will scratch their heads over this. They'll build telescopes, measure distances, track galaxies, and realize that the universe isn't just expanding, it's accelerating. Some will mutter about Einstein's greatest blunder. Others will scribble equations, and all of them will admit the truth. They don't really know why. Dark energy remains the universe's greatest poker face, refusing to reveal its hand. You chuckle, because from your vantage point, it's clear. Dark energy is the cosmic prankster who keeps nudging galaxies farther apart, just to see scientists squirm. You can almost hear it whisper, "Good luck figuring me out." But despite the mystery, the effect is breathtaking. The web stretches wider, galaxies drift farther, and the universe begins to look less like a crowded ballroom and more like a vast city where the lights keep spreading outward, block after block, endlessly. You drift along one of the dark matter filaments, running your fingers, if you had them, through the invisible strands. It feels like tracing the strings of a colossal harp, each note resonating through billions of light years. The tune is slow, patient, eternal, and you can't help but marvel. You're not just watching stars and galaxies form. You're watching the hidden architecture, the secret bones of the universe, shaping everything you know. It's humbling, and just a little funny, to realize that most of reality is invisible. If this were a party, dark matter and dark energy would be the guests who never speak, never dance, yet somehow run the whole show. As the galaxies glide farther apart, the cosmic web stretches with them, a network so vast you could drift forever and never see its edge. And somewhere inside that endless sprawl, in one tiny corner not yet lit, lies the seed of a future solar system, waiting patiently for its turn in the spotlight. The stage isn't finished yet. The props are still being set. The lights still adjusted. But the performance, your performance, is slowly, inexorably coming together. You drift back, the unseen threads humming beneath you, and whisper to yourself, the universe isn't just expanding, it's rehearsing. You drift deeper into the glittering quilt of galaxies, but your gaze lingers on something odd, something almost shy. Tiny specks of dust floating in the stellar glow. Not the kind of dust you sneeze at, but stardust, the ashes of giants. Supernovae, those reckless fireworks of the early cosmos, have scattered their guts across space, sprinkling the void with elements heavier than helium. At first, it looks unimpressive, like faint motes in sunlight. But you lean closer, and the truth hits you. This dust is treasure. Carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, building blocks of rock, oceans, air, and eventually, everything from your coffee mug to your left pinky toe. The universe is seeding itself, quietly handing out recipes for life in the form of glitter. You follow a wisp of dust as it drifts into a dense gas cloud. Gravity is already at work here, tugging, compressing, pulling the particles tighter. Hydrogen swirls in, cooling, condensing, until the cloud feels less like a mist and more like a womb. Stars will spark here, yes, but between those stars, the leftover crumbs of dust will clump together, like flour and water turning into dough. You hover closer, and you see the first little lumps, planetesimals, tiny compared to stars, but mighty in ambition. They smash together, break apart, reform over and over, like toddlers wrestling in a sandbox. It's messy, violent, but necessary. Out of their collisions come bigger and bigger bodies, the embryos of planets. One of them tumbles past you, no bigger than a mountain yet glowing faintly with the heat of its own collisions. It feels alive in its chaos, eager to grow. You reach out, but it slips by, spinning, still unfinished. Later, scientists will peer into these processes with radio telescopes, squinting at the faint disks around young stars. They'll argue about how quickly dust clumps, whether turbulence helps or hinders, whether pebbles stick or shatter. The debates will go on, and the answers will remain half hidden in the fog of time. But you don't need the arguments. You're here, watching the first bricks of planets snap into place. It strikes you that this is where the real magic happens. Stars are beautiful, yes, but they're stage lights. The drama of life requires a floor to walk on, oceans to ripple, skies to shimmer. And all of that starts here, in the dusty leftovers of exploded stars. You float through one of these protoplanetary disks, dust swirling around you like snow in a globe. It's oddly peaceful, except when two planetesimals collide nearby, shattering into shards that sparkle before merging again. You flinch, then laugh. It's cosmic slapstick, demolition and creation rolled into one. And here's a thought that makes you chuckle. Someday, billions of years from now, creatures on one of these planets will sweep the dust off their furniture, grumbling about chores, never realizing they're brushing away the same stuff that once made their bones, their teeth, their very breath. The dust settles into spirals, drawn into order by gravity's patient hand. The seeds of planets are tucked between those spirals, hidden but inevitable. And you realize that the universe, for all its vastness, has started thinking small. Tiny grains, tiny clumps, tiny worlds. Quiet steps on the path to something far grander. You lean back, letting the swirl of stardust surround you, and it feels like drifting inside a snowstorm that never ends. You whisper to yourself, almost in awe, out of ashes, futures are born. The universe isn't just a fireworks show anymore. It's a gardener, planting worlds in the soil of stars. The snowstorm of stardust fades behind you as you glide into a pocket of the cosmos where gravity has been particularly busy. At the center of this swirling disk, a star has already ignited, its glow steady, its warmth spreading outward. Around it, the dust and gas spin in obedient circles like skaters tracing loops on a frozen pond. This isn't just a nursery anymore. It's becoming an architect's workshop. You drift closer, and the scale of it makes you pause. The star blazes at the center like a bonfire, while the disk stretches out for billions of miles. Within this disk, the building blocks of a solar system are at work. Rings of gas and dust ripple with patterns, places where baby planets are carving lanes for themselves, sweeping their orbits clean like kids scribbling in fresh snow. One rocky embryo lumbers into view, no bigger than Mars, yet already ambitious. It smashes into another, the collision so violent you'd think both would be destroyed. But no, the rubble rains down, and the fragments fuse into a larger whole. You can almost hear the universe chuckling because progress here is brutal. Planets aren't delicately sculpted, they're bullied into existence. You follow one of these worlds, in progress, glowing with the heat of constant impacts. Every time a new rock slams in, it flashes, melts, and merges until the surface resembles a boiling soup. You wouldn't last a second here, though honestly you'd look great glowing lava red for the half second you survived. Over millions of years, the chaos eases. The biggest bodies clear their paths, gobbling up the leftovers, while smaller fragments settle into belts and clouds. The star, now steady, bathes its brood in light, as if keeping watch over the rough housing. Slowly, clumsily, order begins to emerge. You hover above this young system and realize you're seeing the blueprint of something familiar. Inner planets forming close to the star, stripped of most gas, rocky and dense. Further out, giants swell with hydrogen and helium, cloaked in thick atmospheres. Beyond them, icy fragments linger in the cold, waiting to be nudged into comets someday. It's not quite our solar system, but it's close enough to feel like déjà vu. Astronomers in later ages will hunt for systems like this, spotting the faint dips in starlight as planets pass across their suns. They will argue about whether hot Jupiters migrated inward, whether super-Earths are common, and why some disks look lopsided, and every discovery will remind them of one thing: worlds are not rare, they're inevitable. You smile at that, because here, in this dusty workshop, the idea of planets is no longer just potential, it's destiny. You drift past a half-formed giant, its atmosphere still pulling itself together, gases spiraling like cream into coffee. You glance toward the star and wonder, somewhere in this galaxy, will there be another system like this, with a small rocky planet just far enough from its sun to cradle oceans? The thought lingers, warm and unsettling. Because if the answer is yes, then the universe is already planting the seeds not just for planets, but for neighbors. You tilt back, letting the light of the young star wash over you. Around it, the planets in waiting whirl in their graceful chaos, a celestial carousel grinding slowly toward completion. The universe has moved beyond stars and galaxies. It's now sketching homes, crafting worlds, preparing stage after stage for stories that haven't even been imagined yet. And you, patient traveler, drift onward, knowing one of these worlds will eventually be yours. You leave behind the carousel of newborn planets and find yourself drifting toward a system still in its violent adolescence. One rocky world stands out, not because it's welcoming, but because it's anything but. Its surface boils with lava seas, its sky chokes with poisonous gases, and colossal asteroids crash down, as if the universe is still testing how many hits a planet can take before giving up. Spoiler: this one won't give up. You hover above, watching the chaos unfold. Each impact gouges craters miles deep, melting stone and flinging molten shards into orbit. Some fragments settle into a ring, shimmering faintly against the glare, while others rain back down like fiery confetti. The planet groans under the onslaught, reshaping itself with every blow. You imagine the sound, like an endless drumline of hammers on anvils echoing across the void. It's not music you'd sleep to, unless you were into heavy metal lullabies. And yet, beneath the carnage, something remarkable is happening. The impacts are not just destructive, they are constructive. Water-rich asteroids deliver ice that vaporizes on contact, creating clouds of steam that eventually condense into rain. Over millions of years, those rains will carve valleys, fill basins, and smooth scars. What begins as chaos becomes preparation. You drift lower, brushing past the thick atmosphere, a cocktail of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur. It stings your lungs, if you had lungs, but you can almost taste the tang of volcanic gases. Lightning crackles through the clouds, striking the molten ground in blinding flashes. Each bolt rearranges molecules, forging complex chemicals in a fiery soup. It's as if the planet is running experiments, trying out recipes in a kitchen with way too many explosions. Scientists will later name this tumultuous time the Hadean Eon, after the underworld. They'll argue about whether the entire surface was molten, whether oceans formed early or late, whether the moon's birth made conditions better or worse. The debates will continue, fueled by scant evidence. But you don't need debates. You're watching the first draft of a habitable world being written in fire and stone. And speaking of the moon, you glance up just in time to see a colossal intruder barreling toward the planet. It's the size of Mars, a rogue world on a collision course. You brace yourself, not that it helps, as the two worlds collide in a cataclysm beyond imagination. Rock liquefies, vaporizes, sprays into orbit in a storm of glowing debris. For a moment, it looks like the planet has been split open, its molten heart bared to the cosmos. The debris doesn't drift away. It gathers, pulled into a glowing ring that circles the battered world. Over time, those fragments coalesce into a single companion, the moon, a scar, a satellite, and someday, a stabilizer for the planet's wobbly tilt. You smile despite the destruction, realizing that out of disaster comes balance, and out of chaos comes the silver lantern that will one day guide tides and poets alike. The battered planet spins on, scarred but stubborn, its surface still roiling, but its destiny intact. You drift back into the dark, looking down at this fiery globe and whispering to yourself, "This is the birthplace." Not yet hospitable, not yet calm, but determined. And if you listen closely, past the thunder, past the molten roar, you can almost hear it, the faintest promise of oceans, winds, and, eventually, voices. The stage is set. The planet is scarred, molten, restless. but it's alive in its own way, and it's waiting for the next act. The molten chaos of the young planet slowly begins to soften. You hover above as the last great bombardments quiet, and the crust hardens into plates of rock, cracked and jagged, but solid enough to bear the weight of oceans. Rain, endless rain, falls from skies heavy with vapor. For thousands upon thousands of years, it doesn't stop. Torrents carve valleys, rivers surge, and basins fill until the first oceans shimmer under a sky that is still more poison than promise. From your perch, the planet now looks different. No longer just a lava sphere, but a patchwork of seas and islands, steaming under a hazy orange glow. Lightning flashes across the sky, stabbing at the waves with electric fingers. Each strike splits molecules, recombines atoms, and leaves behind traces of something new. Organic molecules, fragile, strange, and improbably important. You drift lower, watching the seas churn with chemical richness. Carbon dioxide dissolves into the water, mixing with nitrogen, methane, ammonia. It's a soup, yes, but not the kind you'd want to sip unless you enjoy acid and sparks. Still, within this turbulent broth, something astonishing is stirring. Simple molecules link together into chains. Chains fold into shapes, and shapes begin to perform tricks, absorbing energy, splitting apart, reforming again. It's chemistry flirting with the idea of biology. On one rocky shoreline, you spot puddles drying under the heat of a volcanic vent. Molecules concentrate there, crowding closer as the water evaporates. They bump, stick, and twist into more complex forms. You can almost imagine them whispering, "Let's try this. Let's see what happens if we live." Scientists will later argue endlessly about this. Was it the deep-sea hydrothermal vents, where mineral-rich water bubbled up in warm chimneys, offering natural laboratories for molecules to assemble? Was it the shallow pools on volcanic shores, drying and refilling like nature's own chemistry set? Or did the first sparks come from space, delivered by comets rich with organic compounds? Each theory has evidence, each has flaws, and the truth may be a blend of them all. But you don't need the debates. You're here at the moment where possibility hardens into inevitability. The planet is experimenting on a scale no lab could ever match. Every lightning bolt, every volcanic eruption, every tide is an ingredient tossed into the cauldron. And you sense it, that quiet shift when random becomes intentional, when chaos starts to resemble pattern. You smile at the absurdity. From the perspective of the cosmos, this is small stuff, microscopic, invisible, laughably fragile. But from your perspective, this is everything. Because one of these fragile molecules will copy itself. And once it does, once replication begins, the story changes forever. For now, though, you linger on the shoreline, listening to the hiss of rain against rock, the rumble of distant thunder, the gurgle of vents beneath the sea. The world is no longer just violent, it's creative. The fire has cooled, the waters have gathered, and the chemistry is whispering secrets into the dark. You lean closer, as if not to miss the moment, and murmur, "Life isn't here yet, but it's on its way." The oceans ripple under a heavy sky, and you lean close, as if your breath alone could tip the balance. Something tiny, almost laughably so, stirs in the chemical soup. Chains of molecules, once fragile and fleeting, begin to do something audacious. They copy themselves. Not perfectly, mistakes slip in, but those mistakes mean variety. Variety means options, and options mean survival. You hover above a droplet, no bigger than a speck of dust, and watch as one strand of molecules splits and reforms, then does it again. Replication. Life's first rehearsal. It isn't pretty, it isn't fast, but it is relentless. Once the first copy is made, the rest is inevitable, like dominoes tumbling through eternity. Soon, membranes form around some of these replicators, bubbles of fat and protein that act like little shields. Inside, the chemistry buzzes more efficiently, protected from the chaos outside. These tiny bubbles drift, merge, split, and compete, each trying to hold onto the spark a little longer. If you squint, they almost look alive. You chuckle, because technically they're not quite life yet, just protocells, precursors, the universe's warm-up act. But, oh, they're close. The line between chemistry and biology is thinning, and the planet knows it. Hydrothermal vents pump out minerals that act like catalysts. Shallow pools bake in the sun, lightning forks the sky, and everywhere, molecules are testing new tricks. Scientists billions of years later will argue about this moment. Was RNA the first to take the stage, carrying both information and function? Or did proteins come first, forming simple machines that later learned how to read instructions? Some will say life began multiple times, only for most versions to die off, leaving one lucky lineage to dominate. The debates will rage, because evidence this old is like smoke. You can smell it, but you can't hold it. But you don't need fossils or lab experiments. You're here, watching the first whispers of life crawl out of chaos. And though the world around you is still harsh, lava bubbling, asteroids occasionally smashing down, skies filled with choking gases, these tiny replicators don't care. They're stubborn. They divide, mutate, survive, and in doing so, they declare something audacious. The planet is no longer just geology, it's biology. You grin at the absurdity. Billions of years from now, one of their descendants will invent pizza. Another will argue about taxes. And it all starts here, with bubbles and strands in a chemical soup. You drift upward, taking in the whole planet. Oceans stretch vast and dark, dotted with volcanic islands, each one a laboratory of lightning and chemistry. Beneath the waves, vents glow like undersea campfires, sheltering the earliest experiments in survival. The surface is still violent, but somewhere inside this roiling chaos, something has changed forever. You whisper into the storm, replication has begun. Life, simple, fragile, laughably tiny, has taken its first breath. You drift down into the ancient seas, their darkness pierced only by the dim glow of hydrothermal vents. Chimneys of black smoke rise from the sea floor, spewing mineral-rich water into the cold depths. Around them, the very first true cells are stirring, primitive, but alive in a way their chemical ancestors could only dream of. They're prokaryotes, simple, single-celled organisms with no nucleus, no frills, just raw determination. You hover close to one, watching as it divides, two cells where one once floated. The process is clumsy, imperfect, but effective. You chuckle because it looks like a photocopier that's been dunked in seawater and somehow still works. Some of these microbes learn to harvest energy from the chemicals around them. They gobble hydrogen sulfide from the vents, spitting out waste in exchange for power. Others float higher, closer to the sunlight, and discover something even more radical. Photosynthesis. Using sunlight to split water, they release oxygen as a byproduct. At first it seems trivial, a cosmic burp, but that gas, invisible and reactive, will change everything. You rise higher in the water, following bubbles of oxygen as they drift upward. The oceans can hold only so much before they overflow, and soon the gas seeps into the atmosphere. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the air begins to change. For life, this is a revolution. For many early microbes, it's a death sentence. Oxygen is poison to them, corrosive and lethal. You shake your head. It's the first great extinction, caused not by an asteroid or eruption, but by tiny cells simply trying to survive. Scientists will later call this the Great Oxidation Event. They'll find banded iron formations in ancient rocks, layers of rust basically, that mark the first time oxygen saturated the oceans. They'll argue about the timeline. Was it sudden or gradual? Did oxygen pulse in fits and starts or rise steadily? The debates will swirl, but the truth is here, visible in the shifting hues of the water and the slow, steady change in the skies. And the survivors? They adapt. Some learn to tolerate oxygen, even use it. With this new powerful fuel, cells can generate more energy, grow larger, become more complex. You watch one divide and think, this tiny spark is the ancestor of everything with lungs, everything that will ever breathe, including you. You grin at the thought. Somewhere in these greenish seas, your story is bubbling, one cell at a time. If you listen closely, you can almost hear their whispers. We survived the poison and will use it to thrive. Above, the skies clear slightly as oxygen eats away the haze, letting sunlight pour in brighter than before. The seas sparkle under the new light, and the world feels just a little more alive, a little more ready for the chapters to come. You float upward, leaving the vent fields behind, the microbes still dancing in their invisible millions. The planet hums differently now, less hostile, more dynamic, as if it's catching its breath. Life is no longer just surviving, it's changing the world itself. And you, lucky wanderer, are watching evolution's first great power play unfold. You hover over a coastline that doesn't look like any beach you know. There's no sand, no palm trees, just jagged black rocks and tide pools shimmering with strange colors. In these shallow waters, something extraordinary is brewing. The once humble prokaryotes have been busy, tinkering with survival, and some of them have pulled off an evolutionary stunt, so bold you can't help but smirk. They've learned teamwork. You lean in closer and see them not as lonely, drifting cells, but as partners locked in a microscopic embrace. One cell swallows another, not as a snack, but as a roommate. Instead of digestion, the swallowed cell settles in, offering its host a superpower, a way to make energy more efficiently. Over time, the swallowed one becomes an organelle, the mitochondrion, the powerhouse that textbooks later love to brag about. It's a bizarre form of cooperation, almost codependent, yet brilliant. Together, they thrive where alone they might have failed. These new creatures, eukaryotes, are bulkier, more versatile, and infinitely more ambitious than their single, simple ancestors. You can almost hear them whispering, "We've leveled up." Some of them even snag another kind of roommate, a photosynthetic bacterium that becomes the chloroplast. Now they can capture sunlight and turn it into food while keeping their mitochondria humming inside. It's like having solar panels and a backup generator crammed into one tiny package. You chuckle, because if cells had marketing teams, this would be their flashy commercial. Eukaryotes, life, but better. Of course, not everyone is impressed. Many prokaryotes keep on living just fine without upgrades, and some scientists, billions of years later, will debate exactly how this symbiotic dance began. Did the host enslave the guest, or was it a mutual handshake deal? Was it one lucky accident, or did it happen repeatedly until only the most successful version survived? The details are hazy, but the result is crystal clear. Complexity has arrived. You glide over the oceans and notice something else. Structures beginning to form that are far more elaborate than a single cell. Colonies. Groups of eukaryotes sticking together, coordinating just enough to act as a unit. It's messy, like an amateur choir learning to sing, but you know where it's headed. Multicellularity is stirring. The planet itself seems to be taking notice. The seas sparkle with strange blooms, pigments staining the waters in greens, reds, and browns. The oxygen-rich atmosphere clears further, painting the sky a truer blue than ever before. Sunlight cascades down without the thick haze of the past, and the world feels, finally, like it's opening its eyes. You can't help but laugh quietly. Billions of years of dull rock, then sudden bursts of chaos, and now this. A leap forward so dramatic, it feels like the Earth just pressed the fast-forward button on evolution. Somewhere deep down, you know these cells will someday lead to jellyfish, to trees, to whales, to humans lying in bed with earbuds, listening to a sleepy narrator tease them about ancient microbes. For now, though, you drift with the eukaryotes, watching them glow faintly under the sun. Tiny, fragile, and hilariously ambitious, they have set the stage for everything that follows. Complexity has entered the story, and the planet will never be the same. The oceans have settled into a rhythm, and you drift above them, watching life experiment with new tricks. Multicellular organisms begin to appear. Not yet animals as you know them, but simple sponges, tiny filaments, and clusters of cells working in coordinated harmony. They cling to the seafloor, filter water, absorb nutrients, and generally act like they own the place, which, technically, they do. It's slow, painstaking progress. The first multicellular forms are humble and easy to overlook, like a single flickering candle in a cathedral. But patience is everything in evolution. Over millions of years, these groups of cells learn specialization. Some move, some feed, some reproduce more efficiently. They form tissues, rudimentary organs, and the earliest signs of body plans. You hover, fascinated, as this invisible architecture unfolds, cells coordinating like tiny musicians playing an ancient wordless symphony. Above them, the seas are crowded with microbial mats, thick carpets of life that transform the chemical makeup of their environment. Oxygen continues to accumulate, slowly poisoning some early organisms while empowering others. The competition is relentless, and the planet hums with a quiet tension, the push and pull between survival and extinction. You can almost hear the whispers of cells muttering, adapt or perish. Suddenly, something different stirs, a motile creature, capable of moving under its own power. It wiggles, undulating through the water like a tiny, elegant ribbon. This is movement for the first time, not carried by tides or currents, but chosen. Predation follows swiftly behind. Cells begin eating each other, an arms race ignited. Life has discovered conflict, strategy, and, for the first time, the thrill of the hunt. You shiver, partly in awe, partly because even simple predation is brutal. Tiny lives swallowed in the blink of a cosmic eye. Scientists, billions of years later, will debate the timing of these events, piecing together fossils so ancient they barely resemble the creatures they depict. But you're here, seeing it firsthand. Evolution's first experiments with coordination, mobility, and predation. It's messy, chaotic, yet profoundly elegant. You drift closer to a reef-like formation, where clusters of cells form protective layers, filtering the water and trapping nutrients. Each layer supports the next, creating miniature ecosystems. It's the first ecosystem in the true sense. Multiple species, interacting, influencing, shaping one another, and somewhere, in a shadowed crevice, a tiny organism begins a slow, deliberate migration across the seafloor, laying the groundwork for complex behavior. The planet itself feels alive in a new way. Seas teem with activity. Chemical gradients shift with purpose, and oxygen continues to weave its invisible threads into every drop of water. You realize that this is the first real heartbeat of life on Earth. Not one cell, not one organism, but networks of interaction, pushing, pulling, and shaping the future. You laugh softly, thinking of how far it has come, from stardust to lava to molecules to bubbles to cells, and now to ecosystems. And somewhere, in the shadow of those early reefs, the ancestors of everything yet to come are testing their courage, their speed, and their cleverness. The stage is growing more crowded. Life is no longer an experiment. It's a story in motion, and the next chapters promise drama, spectacle, and innovation beyond imagining. Time flows like a river, slow and relentless, and you drift along with it, watching life gain confidence. The seas have thickened with organisms, modal cells, multicellular mats, and tiny predatory pioneers. Oxygen now saturates the water, and the chemical landscape is richer than ever. Life isn't just surviving anymore. It's experimenting, exploring, innovating. You drift over the seafloor and notice the first true animals. Tiny, soft-bodied, and delicate, they move with a grace that belies their simplicity. Sponges filter water, jellyfish pulsate, and worm-like creatures crawl along the sediment, probing, sensing, learning. It's the first wave of animal life, and every pulse of their movements is an experiment in coordination and response. Above them, the seas shimmer with strange blooms of algae, coloring the water in greens and reds. Sunlight penetrates deeper than before, and with it comes the energy to fuel increasingly complex bodies. The earliest animals aren't flashy, but their simplicity belies their potential. They carry the blueprint for skeletons, muscles, and, eventually, nervous systems. You smile at the irony. The tiniest ripple of a creature today will echo through billions of years to produce eyes that can peer across galaxies. Predation intensifies. Some creatures evolve spines or shells. Others develop stealth or speed. The seas become a theater of life and death, innovation and extinction. You hover as a tiny predator snares a smaller organism, swallowing it whole. It's brutal but necessary. Without these first predators, evolution would lack one of its most important driving forces. Scientists will puzzle over the fossils of this time for centuries. They will argue over which lineages led to modern phyla, which experiments were dead ends, and which adaptations were lucky accidents. Fossils like the enigmatic Dickinsonia or the strange fronds of Charnia will baffle researchers, hinting at early forms of symmetry, mobility, and organization. But from your vantage point, you see it clearly. The first stirrings of the Cambrian explosion are already in motion. You drift closer to a shallow reef, watching organisms interact. Some filter, some graze, some hide, and some hunt. Tiny chemical signals flicker between cells, a silent language of attraction and avoidance. Life has discovered communication, coordination, and cunning. Even in its simplest forms, strategy exists, and the competition pushes every organism to innovate or vanish. You can't help but chuckle, imagining the conversations, if there were such a thing, between these earliest animals. Move faster, hide better, eat smarter. Their playground is perilous, but it's also fertile. Every success, every failure, shapes the world around them. From this vantage, the planet feels like a bustling workshop, filled with tireless builders, hunters, and dreamers. The seas hum with life's first real energy, a dynamic pulse that promises something extraordinary. A future filled with complexity, diversity, and, eventually, intelligence. You drift back, letting the rhythm of the oceans wash over you. Life is no longer tentative. It is confident, experimental, and relentlessly ambitious. The stage has grown crowded, but the story is only just getting interesting. The world has settled into a rhythm that feels almost musical, if you squint at it in the right way. Predators chase prey, grazers scrape the surfaces, filter feeders hum along in their steady work, and the chemical landscape shifts in response. Life has learned not just to survive, but to influence its environment. Oxygen levels rise, minerals cycle, and the very chemistry of the planet becomes intertwined with its inhabitants. You drift above the shallow seas, watching tiny creatures move with coordination that seems almost choreographed. Some curl into spirals, others flatten against the substrate, and a few launch themselves with graceful flicks. Tiny acrobats in a watery arena. The first nervous systems are emerging, simple networks that sense touch, light, and chemical gradients. A ripple in the water sends a shiver down a line of cells, prompting an evasive flick, a twitch, a reaction. It's elementary, yes, but it's the birth of behavior. Predation is escalating. Small predators sharpen their strategies, while prey evolve armor, stealth, and speed. It's an evolutionary arms race, the first real one. And every success and failure echoes across millions of years. You grin quietly, imagining debates among future scientists over which tiny adaptations mattered most. Did spines drive innovation? Or the first nerve cords? The fossils will be cryptic, yet they whisper hints. Symmetry, segmentation, appendages in the making. Above, the sun pierces the thinning haze. illuminating waves of algae that sway in the current. Photosynthetic life is booming, enriching the oceans and stabilizing oxygen levels. You marvel at the feedback loop, life altering its environment, which in turn reshapes the possibilities for life. The planet feels aware in its own way, not conscious but responsive, as if the chemistry itself has learned to dance. And somewhere beneath the waves, in sedimented nooks and crevices, larger forms begin to emerge. Soft-bodied animals experiment with movement and structure. Some develop rudimentary shells or spiny protrusions, the earliest hints of exoskeletons. Others extend appendages, exploring space and testing the limits of coordination. You lean closer and imagine them whispering to one another, if only in chemical signals. Try this, move that way, survive. The oceans teem with life in ways the planet has never known before. Complexity builds, layer upon layer. Multicellularity, mobility, predation, cooperation, all interwoven into an intricate tapestry. It's the first true ecosystem, dynamic, competitive, and astonishingly resilient. You drift higher, letting the gentle currents carry you, and notice the subtle transformation in the atmosphere. Oxygen continues to rise, weather patterns stabilize, and the stage for terrestrial exploration begins to take shape. The world is no longer purely aquatic. It hums with the anticipation of new possibilities. For the first time, you sense a slowing of the frenetic pace, a gentle, almost tender lull. Life has become abundant enough to sustain cycles, to shape landscapes, and to prepare for something far greater. The stage is set, the actors are ready, and the story begins to transition toward land, toward forests, toward creatures that will one day gaze at the stars. You whisper softly, letting the sound mingle with the distant rumble of underwater currents. The stage is rich, the performers relentless, and the world is ready for its next act. The tempo slows, the details soften, and the oceans hum a lullaby for the creatures below. The chaos of creation gives way to rhythm, and you feel the planet sigh, a gentle ancient exhale that promises continuity, endurance, and the quiet anticipation of what comes next.